hands to speak, if no one prays, these very stones cry out, I am.
Shalom, hello again, and back to our series, The Stones Cry Out, Archaeology. And we're going to really see some stones on this program. We're going to go to the street that ran along the western wall of the temple, a commercial street where there were little shops and so forth. The disciples and the Lord must have walked. There was stones crashing down on that place when the Romans conquered it in 70 AD, as there was in this house. The Romans came up the hill, that's not far away, and part of that same destruction was done here. You can see the burn marks around me. The kitchen of this house is here, and the pottery and so forth was utilized in this house. Well, the street was a place that people came when they met at the temple. As we would have a commercial street near a big church, maybe we'll meet or we'll go after church and eat there or something of that kind. But when the prophecy was fulfilled, that not one stone will be left on another, many of those stones from up on the Temple Mount came crashing down on this street. Dr. Tom McCall of our ministry will interview archaeologist YAAKOV BILLIG.
After 2 years of excavation, we uncovered the main street of Jerusalem going from north to south alongside the Temple Mount. On the drawing we can see this street alongside the western wall of the Temple Mount. Here it is down below. We uncovered a section 200 feet long, and it goes alongside the western wall, the retaining wall of the Temple Mount, which is right over here, preserved up to 15 stones high. In the western wall we can see the remnants of a very large arch named after an American explorer, Edward Robinson, Robinson's Arch. The arch was part of a series of arches with the staircase leading up into one of the gates into the Temple Mount during the days of the temple, the end of the 1st century BC, till the year 70 AD. On either side of the street we can see the entrances into shops. This was, like I said, a shopping center. We can see the remnants of the shops down here below. We can assume that some of the shops served as money changers, others could have sold pitot, or bread, or spices, or milk, or cheese, or souvenirs for the tourists, or anything like that. We can imagine, if we sort of restore life on this street, we can imagine that there were thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who walked here day after day as part of the local residents doing their shopping, pilgrims who came to see the temple and pray to the Lord, and probably also sightseers and tourists who came to see one of world's treasures, the temple.
Well, YAAKOV, can you tell me about these large stones that have been stacked up there?
Fine. These are some of the original stones that were originally built on the Western Wall. What we see of the Herodian Western Wall is maybe 40% of the original height. Beforehand, when the wall was constructed, it reached about 35 meters above street level. Now, when the wall was constructed, all these stones were way up high up there on the top, and when the Romans decided to destroy the Temple Mount, they just dislodged them and hurled them down one after the other. And this is what's left of the pile of the destruction of the Western Wall stones.
So these have been here since the year 70, and
these are here since the year 70, maybe a bit later. I guess the Roman soldiers in their leisure took 1 or 2 stones every day as their project and continued to hurl them down until they just couldn't get any more.
The temple, with its adjoining structures, was the largest holy sanctuary ever constructed by human hands. The massive stones used for its retaining walls weigh between 4 and 5 tons each. There were several different methods used to move large stones 2,000 years ago. Near the excavation site, 3 stone moving machines have been reconstructed and are now on display. The first machine consists of two large wheels which are made to fit on two opposing sides of a stone. The almost immovable stone became a rolling wheel that could travel a long distance. The second method used a sled. Large stones, or smaller ones like the ones we see here, could be moved by pushing the sled forward over the rounded logs underneath. The logs would be rotated from back to front after the sled had rolled over them to keep the process going. This last machine, an ancestor of the modern crane, lifted large stones and put them in place. This model, however, is incomplete since pulleys haven't been put in place yet. It's important to use pulleys since the weight of a stone could be reduced by 50% each time a pulley was added. Therefore, a strong group of workers, pulling ropes threaded through a series of pulleys, could lift a very large stone and place it wherever it needed to go.
Now, in our project, we wanted to reveal the first half of the street. Doing so, we had to remove the top levels of later construction of the Muslim palaces, the Byzantine homes, Roman homes, and then go down through the rubble to reveal the street. So here we have a nice segment of street level as it has been preserved underneath the rubble. Well, back there, we wanted to keep half of the site showing the next chapter, the fate of the magnificent city of Jerusalem, with the pile of stones tragically covering the magnificent
So that's what
pavement.
all of this looked like when you first started there.
Even here we had a much larger pile due to the collapse of the arch. Because here you can see above us is Robinson's Arch. And when the arch came down, there was a huge pile of stones that covered this whole space between the base of the arch and the part of the arch in the wall. And when the arch was broken, it has a much harder effect than one stone after the other being rolled down. Because when the arch is broken, the whole mass that was connected and locked high in the sky comes down with a tremendous force, and here you can see the evidence of the impact.
So
This
that's why
is
these
the arch
are...
hitting the pavement and doing this damage. So here the pavement fractured a bit, but it's all here. Some is sunken down a bit. Back there where the stores were, you can see the stores are gone. They've been crashed and knocked underground by the force of the collapsing arch.
A few steps from where the stones fell, the shops on the other side of the street needed only light patchwork to be restored to the condition you see here. They were so well preserved that you can still see notches carved into this stone threshold. These were for the hinges of the wooden door used by the merchant whenever the shop opened or closed.
Was there any underground tunnels that were in this area?
We have the drainage systems. A street like this being down in the valley, the Terapion Valley, was down between the Temple Mount on one hand and the upper city on the other hand. And naturally, after it would rain, all the rainwater would converge down here. But the shop owners wouldn't appreciate if their stores were flooded, so the local city engineers had to construct underground drains. As part of the drainage systems, we have all sorts of little items here. Like we have the nice big stone over there with the slits to let the rainwater through. But then if it all gets clogged up by the mud that would flow with the rainwater, there's a nice sized manhole made of stone. It takes an iron fist to lift out and have the workers, the local municipality workers, go down and clear out the dirt that sort of blocked it up, because otherwise it just wouldn't work.
An ancient manhole cover.
An ancient manhole cover, but it's still impressive and maybe even more impressive than the modern substitute.
There's a lot of activity going on behind us. Can you tell us what these workmen are doing?
Fine. Once the bulk of the archaeological excavation is over, we want to open the site to the tourists, so everyone can come in and experience the excitement that we had in our excavation and learn about the site. As part of landscaping the area and opening it up for the tourists, we have to sort of maneuver here with different walkways. So certain areas have to be lifted, others have to be dug, and this is sort of a completion, a minor completion of the archaeological excavation here. Say the major digging is done with a larger pick and hoe. The more delicate work has to be done with a little pick and trough. The dirt is collected into buckets looking for artifacts as the work goes on. If there's an artifact found, then it's collected either in a bucket or a box, registered, marked down with a description where it came from, so we can relate to it later in our report.
Now, we understand that you found a large pillar while you were going through the excavations. Tell us about this pillar.
I'd say this pillar is the major find of the dig. Since the pillar is a museum piece which can relate to you the story of the site's history. The original function of the pillar was probably in the Herodian construction of the Temple Mount's environments, because there's evidence that it was a very, very large pillar. The second phase of its life was in the Roman period. The Romans chiseled it down to a narrower circumference and engraved a Latin inscription dedicated to the Caesars Vespasian and his son Titus. The pillar was erected by the 10th Roman Legion, who conquered Jerusalem and was later stationed here. The third phase of the pillar was just another building stone in one of the Umayyad palaces here. Together, they tell us the story of Jerusalem's history in its more dominant events. It's not just a regular stone, it talks to you. It has an inscription and has a story to tell us. Another very important inscription here has been found beneath the corner of the Temple Mount. The top cornerstone had a Hebrew inscription that any first grader Israeli could read, and it said, "To the house of the trumpeting." And we know from Josephus Flavius and we know from the Talmudic texts that on the corner of the Temple Mount, one of the priests went to blow a trumpet to announce when Saturday, Shabbat, would fall, the exact moment from when work was forbidden, and immediately when Saturday was over, they blew the horn again to tell people, you're free to do whatever work you'd like.
And they would stand right on that
on the pinnacle
of the temple, right
and
in the
blow
corner.
the horn, and I'm pretty sure that there wasn't a house in Jerusalem that didn't hear the horn that was blown way, way high up on the top of that corner.
There was another building referred to in Scripture that had a similar design to the Temple of the Lord in Jerusalem. When we return, we'll take you to the digs atop Mount Gerizim and examine the remains of the Samaritan temple.
Come with Zola Levitt and see for yourself the land of the covenant.
I do not see how it could have been any better with what was chosen for us to do, as well as who guided us, who spoke with us, the other people on the trip. It was wonderful.
Tour the Holy Land with Zola Levitt. Call or write for more information.
This is a very interesting program because it was a unique find relatively recently in Israel, a real Samaritan temple on Mount Gerizim, where you'd expect to find it. In John 4:20, the Samaritan woman is talking to the Lord, and she says, "Our fathers worshipped in this mountain," and she means Mount Gerizim, where they worship. And ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. She's involving the Lord in theological tangles, but and he told her, of course, he worship in spirit and in truth, doesn't matter what city, what mountain. The Samaritans, were considered sort of half-breed Jews. They were, when the Assyrians took away the 10 tribes of the north, they brought people from elsewhere into the northern Israeli tribes, and they intermarried with Jews they found and so on, and created another kind of people who worshipped in a different way on Mount Gerizim near Sychar and Shechem, which are now in the north in Samaria. And the temple that was discovered is quite similar in design to the Jerusalem temple of Zerubbabel, and probably would have shared that time. It's a very, very interesting find. Our producer, Ken Berg, interviewed the archaeologist Ronen Bitan.
Now you have just an incredible dig going on here. How many workers are involved in the present dig?
In the present dig, we have between 60 to 100 labor every day. All of them are coming from the villages around Shechem. And also we have here a few archaeologists coming from the same villages people from the Arab universities in Shechem and in Amman.
So do you feel that in rebuilding this replica of the temple that it was built to the same size, the same dimensions as the temple in Jerusalem?
Yes, we see it even in the diggings now. We can find it. The gates are completely the shape of the gates that are mentioned in the scroll, in the temple scroll, found by Gael Yadin.
And are they working at different periods, the Hellenistic, the Byzantine, at the same time?
Usually the Byzantine is built over the Hellenistic period. So usually they're working in both of them, cleaning the Byzantine, and then we can see the Hellenistic period down.
Well, it's just an incredible sight. I think we're especially interested in seeing what remains there might be of where the temple was. Can we go take a look at those spots?
Yes, let's go.
Great. So Ronan, what do we have now?
Oh, we have here an Aramaic inscription from the 3rd century BC. It's from the times of the temple, let's say 2,300 years ago. We can see here the name Shimon, Shin Mem Ayin Nun, Simon. This stone is not in the, it is in a second usage. As you can see, it's not in the original place. It is inside the Byzantine wall, and they took the stones. The stone was nice, it was square, and then they took it and used it again as a building. They had no meaning for this inscription.
So it's really just another evidence that this is in fact a legitimate location for the temple.
Yes, because it is written here, Hikdish, that means sacrificed. If he sacrifices, he has to give it to a holy place where a temple will be.
Mm-hmm. Well, where are we now?
Well, we reached now the precinct. This is the gate of the sacred precinct. Welcome to the sacred precinct of Mount Gerizim. Now, it's a little hard to see the gate, but if you come with me, I'll show you. This is one side of the gate. This is one wall. And you have 3 small walls, making like some kind of small rooms or cells inside it.
Now, did they use concrete or anything to hold these walls together?
No, but there was some kind of a ceiling over it, maybe an arch.
Okay.
When someone came inside, ignore this wall, which is late Byzantine wall. When someone came from this direction, he used to walk all this way up there, and then if a conqueror comes, you can attack him from the side if you're standing inside the small rooms. This kind of gate will never be seen in the Hellenistic period or no other place, because it is belonged to the first temple period, which ended about 405 or 500 years before. You will only see it in 2 places. One is here, the other one you cannot see, but it is in Jerusalem. Here you can see, down the Byzantine pavement, you can see another pavement with irregular stones, not as the Byzantine pavement. This pavement, also you can see the cement inside it. This pavement was used for the temple pavement. This is for the yard that was around the temple. In the same place, after that, when they built the church, they put a pavement over it. And look here, you can see this is down and the Byzantine pavement is upwards on that. Now, if you will look here, on this side, you will be able to see down here, these are the stones. The original stones probably of the temple. Look how huge they are. It needs about 10 men to carry with wood sticks and everything, each stone that big. They are thrown now in a field over the bedrock. And over them you can see the fill of the ground, and over it the Byzantine pavement is built. This is what we are standing on right now.
So again, comparing the temple that would be in Jerusalem to the temple that would have been here, would the stones have been of similar size, do you believe?
Yes, they were in a big building you need to use big stones to hold the big ceiling. These are not lime, this is called nari.
Okay.
This is the natural stone of the mountain. They were probably taken from the bedrock. There was some kind of quarry somewhere here, and look at the bedrock. In almost everywhere we see, someone smashed it, put it straight.
Mm-hmm. I guess there's no way of knowing what portion of the temple this would be.
No, we cannot know, because this is only a fill. We cannot know what happened here. We need to open all this area. This is what we're going to do next. We're going to open all this area and see how the pavement meets the remains of the walls. And maybe we will be lucky to find the wall here. Now look at the back of us. You can see here people walking, taking from the Byzantine rooms. They are sifting the ground to find. Look at this. These are bones probably used for the supper or the dinner. Probably someone ate these animals. Here you can see nails and other metal parts come from the same time. Near it we can see.
Now again, we're talking the Byzantine period now.
Yes, we are talking about everything here is Byzantine, everything that you see. These are the remains of the storing jars they had here.
100 AD?
This is about 400 or 500 AD.
500.
Yes, they also used a glass. These are the remains of the ancient glass. And most of all, we find here as many as this. These are from one day of working, about 30 or 40 coins, all of them from the Byzantine period.
And what are these made of?
They are all made from bronze. But we already found here a few gold pieces also.
Well, that's fascinating. Would they have had different size coins for different purposes?
Yes. Few of them were huge, as this big. I'm sorry, but we do not have them today.
So they're finding bones, they're finding coins.
Yeah. Here you can see another interesting thing. This is a piece of ivory from a small figurine, just as in the churches of today. And here you can see the remains of a candle, an olive oil lamp. They needed a lamp here and the light in the evening. And this is the olive oil lamp, the remains that you see here.
All right, well that is fascinating. What else is in this area that we can look at?
Over there we can see the remains of the temple. We are reaching now the burned area. You can see here the burned layer all over this area. It is the burn from the sacrifice during the times of the temple.
The sacrifice?
During the times of the temple. Look here at the ash. Let's go now and see the area itself. The altar was probably somewhere here. We didn't discover it yet. But look inside here. This ground is so black. It is full with the remains of the trees burned and remains of the bones of all these animals that were sacrificed here. Look at this. This is a piece of a goat.
What kind of animals do they sacrifice?
Well, they sacrificed only pigeons, only goats and only sheep. This is according to what is written in the Bible.
So this would not be the actual location for the altar, would have been the discards of what was used.
Well, somebody threw here all the remains from the altar. Probably he did it because they were holy, as they do today to Torah books. They will never throw them away to the garbage. They will always bury them. This is probably what they did here. They buried all these remains and then they put ground all over it. It was holy. They couldn't just throw it away. They had to get rid of it somehow to build here. So this is what they do. They buried it.
And how many sacrifices would there have been in a day or a week?
In a temple there were probably about 100 or maybe more sacrificing in every week.
Well, this has been a fascinating tour you've given us. I just want to thank you once again for taking the time to do this with us.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, Tom, everybody's heard of Mount Gerizim because of the Samaritan woman passage, but 3-4 years ago there wasn't any evidence of a temple.
We were there in, just about that time, and there was just the Byzantine church that was there, as has been indicated in the earlier part of the program. But underneath that, they found the Samaritan temple.
Now, these early Christians built their church on purpose on top of the temple?
Probably so. A sacred site kept its sacredness, and so there would be a church on top of a temple area and then a mosque on top of that in many places all over Israel.
Oh, yeah.
And the Samaritan temple is supposed to be along the very same lines and dimensions as the temple that Zerubbabel built when the Jewish people returned from Babylon. And the Samaritans didn't have a temple, and they felt left out of the Jerusalem temple, so they built their own there on Mount Gerizim.
And very similar to the Jerusalem temple. And to speak of that, then Herod remodeled Zerubbabel's, and the temple destruction of 70 AD of Herod's temple, we also discovered, as we saw in the program.
And this new discovery that YAAKOV BILLIG showed us of the Herodian street, right alongside the western wall there, and where there were shops on either side of the street, and the people would come and go and do their shopping. And undoubtedly, Jesus and his disciples must have gone down that very street and shopped there and observed the wares of the merchants along the way.
Fascinating, isn't it? How the archaeology just brings the Bible to life.
And it's all was covered up by all those stones that the Lord himself said not one stone would be left on another. And here the Romans came and they just shoved all those stones down, covered them up, and they've been buried now for 19 centuries, waiting for us to see them today.
And on next week's program, we'll go to look at still another temple built on the coast of the Mediterranean at Caesarea.
There again, we have an ancient Dionysius temple that Herod built his temple to Roma and Caesar Augustus on, and then on top of that was a Byzantine church, and on top of that was a Muslim mosque.
Tom, thanks for helping us on these.
Good to be with you again, Zola.
And Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.